Good afternoon, folks. We are going to be starting our webinar for this afternoon in about a minute. Give folks a little bit more time to log in after lunch. So that's going to be our plan here. Before we start, I want to make sure that you know that you can ask questions. If you have any questions, you can see a dialog box on your screen there on the right-hand side that lets you send in a question to us, and what we'll do is monitor your questions and ask those of our presenter as we go along or at the end if it makes more sense. Also, if you'd notice on the right-hand side there is a handout. If you'd like to have a copy of the presentation today, you can download the PDF and keep that, make notes, take it with you, give it as Christmas gifts, or whatever you might like to do, but it's available for you if you'd like to have it. So what I would like to do now is start our presentation. What I'm going to do is introduce today's speaker, who is Harle. Harle is an old friend of our little group here of the family. She is a senior account executive at Diamond Communication Solutions, a company located in Carroll Stream, Illinois. Diamond is a full-service partner in the design, production, and deployment of data-driven, highly personalized customer communications for businesses and nonprofit organizations. Harle herself, despite her young years, has more than 20 years experience in direct marketing and service as the president of the Chicago Association of Direct Marketing, Women in Direct Marketing International Chicago Chapter, and MFSA's Chicago Chapter. She is also was also kind enough to be a speaker at the National Postal Forum and the Learning Lab that was produced by Mailers Hub. So we're very pleased to have Harle with us today, presenting and talking to you about the convergence of direct marketing, of direct mail and digital. So any further ado, Harle, please take it away.
Okay, thank you, Leo. Can you hear me okay?
Everybody, yes.
Great, okay. All right, thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be presenting to you and for those of us in Chicago during your lunch hour. So thanks for joining. I'd like to thank Leo and Michelle and the whole team at Mailers Hub for this opportunity. Mailers Hub is a fantastic resource. Our company, Diamond Communications, is a Mailers Hub community member, subscriber, and we find tremendous value in Leo and his team and the expertise that they provide and the speed with which they provide it. And we just can't say enough about how much we appreciate Mailers Hub and the value they bring to our company. What we're going to talk about today are, first we'll start with the pros and cons of digital advertising and kind of specifically around banner ads and digital video and how it's working and some metrics around it. We'll talk about the state of direct mail and then move into direct mail's effectiveness in an omni-channel world and in tandem with digital. I'll present some case studies. And you'll see quite a bit of research cited, with different sources, but a good amount of the research that we'll present today is from Mintel Compromedia, which is a really fantastic market research firm that our company subscribes to, and they provide just wonderful content on direct mail and email, digital, variety of channels. And just a quick plug for them as well, it's a really helpful tool, and a lot of the statistics and surveys you'll hear about in this presentation are courtesy of Mintel. Okay, why am I not advancing? Hang on. Having a little trouble advancing. Oh, there we go. There's a little delay. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so we know digital media growth in recent years is really all mobile in terms of the growth. 69% of digital media time is spent on mobile devices. So, this probably comes as no surprise. I know in my own family, from my 11-year-old children to my 80-year-old father, everybody's on their devices. And at all times of day and for all different purposes. You see here, Facebook still has 19% of the app usage time, although younger generations tend to be leaning more toward Instagram and Snapchat and other other platforms, but digital, really is the prominent way that people are consuming their digital media, and probably will be for the foreseeable future. So kind of keeping this whole discussion in the lens of when we're talking digital, we have to really remember that most of this is happening on a mobile device. Speaking specifically about banner ads and digital video, how well does it work? And who's using it? And it's really easy to say, oh, digital's the most effective, digital's the cheapest. I think in the last 10 years or so, a lot of marketers, went full force digital, but is it really working, and how effective is it? This is a survey by Mintel, 2,000 internet users aged 18 plus, representative across reflecting the US Census. 70% of online adults reported that they do notice internet ads. So this isn't saying that they're purchasing, but that they notice it. So right out of the gate, we've got about 30% of the audience that fails to notice ads. That these are people who either are using an ad blocker software, both on their desktop or their mobile device. If they're not using ad blockers, they're likely, again, this 30% that's not noticing, have limited internet habits. They're highly focused on their email, on their subscriptions, potentially to ad-free digital content. So right out of the gate, when we're talking digital, you're losing 30% of the audience, just you have to assume, is not engaging. And of the 70% who are engaging, nearly half, 45%, report that when they notice ads, they want to remove them as quickly as possible. I would think that should even be higher, because I know I'm usually pretty quick to click off ads. But again, you've got 70% who are noticing, and of that, nearly half are clicking off. So that brings you down to about 39% of the total online audience that is even likely to be retaining any substantial information that you're posting on your online banner ads and digital video. And it's even higher for women ages 18 to 34, which is, a very desirable cohort, for a lot of brands. They're often people who are managing for a household, young mothers potentially. So right out of the gate, you've got a relatively limited amount of your audience that's even absorbing your content when you're talking just digital standing on its own. To drive down a little bit into those numbers, there's a chart here that tells you, again, we see the females 18 to 34. They're the largest group that is reporting that they want to make online ads go away as quickly as possible, and keeping in mind that this is within the 70% that's even noticing the ads in the first place. But really across both genders and most age groups, you're still right around the same, just about half or slightly under half of the people who are noticing are trying to get rid of your ad. Here's some kind of drilling down into when people are most interested. Again, starting off with our 70% who's noticing the ads. Probably relatively intuitively, people are noticing ads more in the evening, in the afternoon, as the day goes on. After work, you're, potentially more relaxed, and you're more open to seeing and to absorbing content on the internet. And again, not surprising that during your commute, during work, those are the times that people are least engaged with digital banner ads and digital video. So we know now, or have talked about how people are noticing and paying attention, but how does that translate into purchase behavior? And again, going back to Mintel's study, this was based on about 1,400 internet users who reported that they noticed the ads. So again, this is within our 70%. Only 25% of online adults who notice ads have ever made a purchase because of one. So we're not talking a 25% response rate. We're talking ever, that they've ever reported that they've made a purchase because of a digital ad. So that's a pretty small number when you consider it is only, first of all, 70% of the population who's online and noticing, and now you're down to 25% who actually report that an ad, just a standalone experience with an ad, has really driven them to purchase. And I think what's especially interesting is that number really doesn't change much when we control for the younger generations, and younger being a relative term, but when we're talking the iGens, the millennials, and Generation X, which is basically people up to the age of about early 50s when we're talking the oldest Gen Xers, and iGens being people aged around 25 and younger, so pretty broad spectrum, that still we're only seeing 28% when we factor out the older cohorts of people that are making a purchase because of a digital ad. I thought this was just kind of a funny one. 43% of those in the younger three generations who notice ads during breakfast have made a purchase. So for those people who are really heavily relying on their digital ads, even though the breakfast people who notice are a much smaller number, apparently they tend to be more motivated to buy if they're actually shopping at breakfast time. So a little tip for the digital marketers out there. So what does this mean for opportunities in digital and in banner ads and digital video specifically? Well, first of all, the research finds that repetition is essential, which is really not surprising, and it's pretty much a best practice across all channels, but particularly in digital, when you've got such a large percentage of the audience that is not even paying attention in the first place, repetition is really key to making it successful. Another interesting piece that came out is that dads tend to buy slightly higher than women and higher than men without children. About 30% report making purchase decisions, especially in technology, apparel, and entertainment. And three strategies that seem to work better, and again, some of this is common sense across all channels, but placing digital ads as close to the purchase path as possible, which we see, many companies are making really, really good headway with retargeting, which is obviously the experience we've all had where you're searching for something, a pair of shoes online, and half an hour later when you go back on, that pair of shoes pops up in the corner of your screen. Discounting, again, best practice, works across all channels. And then with digital in particular, and obviously with mobile technology now, allowing us to know where our customers are, local mobile ads. And this chart here shows a little bit more specifically about how multiple viewings resonate with different groups. Again, dads tend to have a higher likelihood to show interest when they see multiple viewings, and Hispanic millennials, which I'm not sure why that cohort in particular, but that is, kind of an interesting number, although there's not a dramatic difference across the board between the general population and those who are most likely to notice after repetitive. And this particular, the statistic is people who agree that seeing an online ad multiple times sometimes increases my interest in the product. So again, we're not talking necessarily even purchasing, but that are showing that if you show me something multiple times, I'm more likely to buy online. I thought this was particularly interesting. If you look down here on some of this drill down about what people who click on the ads report is the reason, you see at the top, offering a discount, visually appealing, store near me, related to products I've researched. That points back to the retargeting and the local mobile ads and discounting. But I noticed down there it says that features someone I'm familiar with, example, a celebrity or an influencer. And we hear a lot in pop culture now, and again, especially with the 20-somethings and the 30-somethings and the people in their teens, about influencers and the power of influencers. And I thought it was interesting that this still is only at 19% of people who click on ads who say that an influencer mattered. I think that number is going to continue to rise as the iGens mature and have more spending power. But I did think that was interesting that, companies spend a lot of money on celebrity endorsements and influencers. And you wonder, is that really as powerful and potentially is the money as well spent as marketers may think? So, okay, so we've talked about what is working with digital, how many people are responding, how effective is it really? We've kind of set some clarity around, is it as powerful as we think? So let's shift over now to talk a little bit about direct mail and where we stand. And some of these statistics you're going to see, we've heard for the last few years, and it's not going to be necessarily a surprise, but I think there's some really encouraging trends happening out there. But first we'll talk about some of the not so encouraging. This chart here represents direct mail volume for credit card acquisition specifically, which is obviously just one sector and one product that is a heavy kind of direct mail, heavy product as advertised in direct mail, and has been over several decades. So it's a little bit of a bellwether, I think, for what we're seeing across the board. But you can see before the recession in 2008, mail volumes obviously were much higher, really took a nosedive after the 2008, which again, this is probably not news to anybody on this call, and we're going to get to a lot better news. But direct mail volume is kind of decline, come back up. I think this chart here is from 2017. I would say we certainly in our company have seen an uptick in the last couple of years, but it's not likely that we're going to get back to where we were in 2007, and that's okay. Reach, credit card companies are reporting that they're still marketing to roughly the same number of people in recent years, but the frequency has declined. And I think that's, again, points to the multitude of channels that we have now, and that companies are getting better at using those channels together more effectively. So while this is, not great news for direct mail companies and people who rely on the mail, it certainly, when used correctly, shows that direct mail is still extremely important, because we're still trying to reach the same number of people with this channel. We're just doing it smarter. Here's just another example, insurance. Another industry that has always kind of been heavily in the mail, and we're seeing kind of the same trend, downward trending, but still being mailed in the hundreds of millions, and still a relevant player. And as most of you probably already know, direct mail is the most expensive channel typically. These are just some general numbers, but cost per household per response, $26.40 for direct mail. Email, of course, we know is a lot lower, less than half. Online display, not a whole lot less, but definitely direct mail is the most expensive. And there's a reason for that. It outperforms all digital channels combined. It may be more expensive, but of course, the good news is we know it works, and it works really, really well. In fact, 5 times more than all the other channels combined. If we're talking 5.1% versus a little bit better than 0.5% when you look at email, social, paid search, and display combined. So what this all tells us is that direct mail has a really important part in the media mix, that it is worth the investment, and that it needs to be used wisely and carefully, which I think some of the numbers that we're seeing with the larger industries are showing that direct mail is being used smarter. Some fun and kind of powerful statistics about why direct mail works so well and why we see such high response rates, or high effectiveness, I should say. 55% of people, and this was a study actually from the UK, believe that physical mail is the medium that gives the best impression of the sender. 57% surveyed are more likely to feel valued when brands connect with them through the mail. And I think this points back to even the cost issue. Consumers understand that there's a higher cost. Obviously, sending people something in the mail is more personal, it's tangible, and it shows that a company has made an investment in you. And I think particularly the younger generations really do feel that value, and that it makes a really strong and positive impression. Direct mail also results in less backup. And what we mean by backup is people tend to sort through their mail as soon as they get it. 77% of respondents to an Epsilon survey reported as soon as they get it. 98% of people check their mail daily. And 77% of millennials pay attention to direct mail advertising. And again, I think that goes to the younger generations. They perceive it as being more valuable, and they also don't get as much clutter. They didn't grow up in a time like we did in the 70s and 80s and 90s when our mailboxes were just full to bursting. What they see is kind of more curated, and it stands out more because they don't have as much clutter. And we also see that when working with other channels, direct mail really gives lift from both a cognitive and emotional response metrics. Here we see, this is a study done in Canada by Canada Post. The most effective sequence in this study was direct mail as a follow-up to digital. And what they found when direct mail followed digital, that there was a 39% lift in increased attention, a 10% increase in brand recall, and a 5% increase in arousal, which I'd love to know how they measured arousal, but nobody's going to complain about increased arousal. So we've established that that direct mail is still powerful, it's still important, but how is it fitting in an omni-channel world? And what does omni-channel even mean? And who's doing it really well? So what I'm going to talk about in the next section here is just how direct mail, what the opportunities are for using direct mail with digital, and show you some case studies of who is doing it well and what kind of tactics they're using, and then just quite a few examples of new technologies that companies are putting into use with their direct mail and digital combined. So, you know, we talk about a lot of different terms: multi-channel, cross-channel, omni-channel, and omni-channel is the newest buzz term I've heard. And what I like about omni-channel is it's really kind of the vision of where we want to go in terms of using customer data to know what they will respond to best in what mix. And I think that's the big challenge for everybody right now, is attribution and figuring out what the secret sauce is, really down to the individual of how people are going to respond. And I'll show some examples here of how we're using different customer journey maps to actually figure out which mix of media is what's getting, you know, Harle and Leo Raymond specifically to buy. I think, you know, many companies, maybe most companies right now, are still kind of in a cross-channel mode or even a multi-channel mode, where you're using different channels, but they may not be working together as effectively as you'd like. But I think in a relatively short amount of time here, this slide, you know, proposes 5 to 10 years, we're going to see companies really figuring it out and really optimizing to the individual. And really, instead of talking about return on investment, talking more about return on involvement. How are we able to get people excited about our brand in the ways that they want to be communicated with, that respect their privacy, and that will impel them to purchase? So just to level set, multi-channel marketing is the new normal. This survey is actually a few years old, and I would certainly suggest that it's even a higher percentage now. But at the time, 2015, 44% of marketers utilized 3 or more channels. So this is the norm: email, social, and direct mail being the top. That's, you know, I'm sure there will be new channels we haven't thought of even in the next few years, but right now those are the 3 powerhouses that most marketers, again, I'd argue that it's probably even better than 44%, are using now. And millennials in particular, while they're definitely mobile first, they're not mobile only. And we need to remember that when we're talking to millennials, and I would say now iGens as well, that millennials here report that what are their most frequent communication channels, and while they report that 55%, yes, it's mobile, 44% still say they want to communicate in person. So this really shows us that mobile channels are first, but they're not taking place of in-person interaction. They're integrating with it. And I think, again, direct mail is kind of the closest thing from a mass standpoint that we can come to with an in-person experience. It's something that's stimulating your senses beyond the visual. And iGens, our younger group, love getting mail. 83%, the U.S. Postal Service reported a couple of years ago that iGeneration consumers say they love getting stuff in the mail. And I can certainly attest to this with, I have twin 11-year-olds in my household who go berserk anytime there's actually a piece of mail that's addressed to them. They get National Geographic magazine every month and practically, you know, beat me down from the door when I say their magazine is here. So it's fun to see. And again, I think some of that goes to they don't get it as often and they don't get as much of it, and it has more of a special meaning and importance. We also know that more and more people are reporting that disconnecting is a way to connect with each other. 26% of U.S. consumers say they spend too much time on the internet for no particular reason, and they're really looking for opportunities to disconnect and to engage in different ways. So we're going to dive into some examples of how companies are doing it well and doing it right and figuring out that mix, and some surprising companies that are using mail. And as I said, we're really seeing it with our clients at Diamond. You know, we have clients that abandoned mail 5 or 6 years ago and have really dived back in. Their email is fatiguing, and they're finding mail, particularly with loyalty customers, to be really, really powerful. Here's a good example, Starbucks. Their mobile app is so popular that the total balance at any given time would place it among the top 10 consumer banks in the US. That's how much transactional activity is happening on their app. But still, what do they send to their loyal customers for rewards? They send them a personalized reward card in the mail to show their customers that you're important, that you've achieved this status, that you mean enough to us, that we're making an investment to send you something tangible in the mail. You see, this is an example of their gold level rewards card. SoFi is an interesting one because SoFi is an online product. This is online financial services. It's a product, being financial, obviously it's a more considered purchase, and they really rely on the legitimacy and the attention that direct mail provides as an advertising medium. You can see here the circle kind of shows that where in the journey, the customer journey, they really use direct mail. For awareness, they're spending most of their investment in online. There's a little bit of print, but mostly it's online, mobile, video, influencer. That's to build their brand, to get awareness. Once they've determined that someone is in their consideration set through their call to action, which is applying online, then, I'm sorry, the call to action for the direct mail is applying online, but they send the direct mail once they have determined that you are a prospect, that you're interested in their product, because they know that financial services, again, this is an important consideration, something that you're going to take some time to think about alone. You want something that you can hold, that you can put a lot of content and copy on, that maybe someone's going to come back to. So they really nail heavily during the consideration set. Then once they've gotten you to apply, which their call to action is an online application, that's when they really switch back to email and reverting for their welcome and onboarding, using email for engagement and advocacy, using email and the other channels. So you can see direct mail plays a really critically important part in closing the deal and getting people to actually apply. Here's a couple of examples of SoFi's direct mail pieces. These were targeted for prospects aged 26 to 40 with strong FICO scores above 680, earning $50,000 a year or more. And you can see that it's relatively copy heavy, and it's conveying a lot more information than a prospect may be consuming if they're just looking at something in a digital ad. So it gives SoFi the opportunity to really tell the story and to give some really kind of meaty content for people to consider when shopping for a loan. Another financial services example we have is Chase, when they launched their Chase Freedom Unlimited product. And this is a little bit, kind of a little tough to read with these small numbers, but this is just their April, this was 3 years ago, their rollout for the Chase Freedom Unlimited. And you can see how they went week by week with the channels working together. So initially they went out to Credit Karma subscribers heavily on social, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and online and mobile, basically announcing the product. Then once they had built some brand awareness around the new launch, they, as you can see, once we get into, I think it looks like about the 14th of the month, so midway through the month was when they went heavy with acquisition direct mail. And I have a couple samples to show you of that. All the while still putting a lot of content on their homepage, because as we know, when people are looking at the direct mail, chances are they're also going online to do further research. And then after the direct mail has been in market for a week, they go back really heavy with the online, the mobile, and the social. So this just kind of shows you a roadmap of how the channels work together. Here's some examples of the Chase Freedom piece. They dropped about 1.2 million pieces of direct mail. And again, you can see there's some good sort of meaty financial information. They've got a lot of statistics, things that really allow the customer to kind of think more deeply about the product during their consideration set. And then they followed it up with social and online. And you can see clearly these are shorter. They're a little more gimmicky. They once you've already sort of been thinking hard about the product, then they're going to come at you with some additional kind of interactive, sign up 8 times you really had to keep shopping, and kind of almost fun, interesting ways to interact when you've already, kind of done some homework on the product and received their direct mail. Some other online brands, in addition, well, there's another SoFi, and then we see Amazon using direct mail to pitch their Prime services. This one went to new movers, which we know is a really ripe audience for a lot of new services. And with the USPS NCOA database, it's very it's not hard to find new movers, to reach new movers. And Prime, again, is a somewhat expensive product. So a little higher consideration set, you're going to drop $100 on Amazon Prime. So they're using direct mail. We already talked about SoFi, and then Uber, which again, a brand that's really just exploded, going from being a strictly mobile online kind of service in terms of enrollment to using direct mail. So here we have, this is a chart that we created for one of our clients whose name you would recognize. They're a large cosmetics firm that we did a programmatic print journey for. And this kind of goes back to the Omni-Channel, is really finding out down to the individual where in the process they're responding to email versus direct mail versus other channels. And this shows kind of the journey we did, establish a control group and then sent them triggered emails. And this was based on replenishment. So these were people that we know had already bought the cosmetics. And this was based on when we expected them to need to purchase again. So again, this is really drilling into your data and based on the product and how long the shelf life is for the product or usage when you think you might be buying again. So you can see we sent triggered emails for the first 2 touches, 1 and 2. Then for the 3rd touch, if they hadn't bought yet, we went to a 5-day ad display. So we go into banner ads, and then we do another email. So if we haven't picked you up by the first, 2 emails and the banner ad, we're going to trigger you with a 3rd email. And then finally, if you still haven't purchased, that's when we go to the targeted direct mail. So we're using the direct mail a little more judiciously, again, because it is a higher cost investment, but we're using it for the people who weren't kind of the low-hanging fruit, that are a little tougher to reach through the other channels that we think are more likely to purchase when they have something that's kind of perceived to have higher value and is more personalized to them. Some other strategies and new products, I'm sure probably most of you have already heard, especially if you were at the Postal Forum, about informed delivery. We're hearing a lot of excitement among our clients about informed delivery, and we know the Postal Service is giving discount incentives to use it. Here's an example of how Citibank established a relationship on their outer envelope. And highlighted their incentive on the outer envelope. And I think we're going to see more and more marketers trending toward getting more mileage out of the envelope because, and this is a mileage campaign here coincidentally, because they know people are viewing it through their informed delivery reporting. So here's an example of how Citibank took advantage of the OE. Geico here even used kind of a fun, interactive, playful, it's easy to open this, find out what's inside, with informed delivery in mind, because again, people may just be seeing this image on their phone or on their desktop before they even get their mail. Another tactic, in addition to informed delivery, that it has made a resurgence, and for those of you who've been doing this for a while like me, I was kind of shocked when QR codes came back on the scene, because they really had petered out a few years ago, but I think now with mobile technology being much easier and it being less steps for people to have to scan and use their phones to scan QR codes, we're seeing more of it now out there and greater success with QR codes. Here's some examples. RJ Reynolds used it on their newsletter. Hayneedle, which is another strictly online retailer, had their scan, shop, repeat. And then Discover linked personalized online applications through their QR code. Couple more big picture loans. Again, this is kind of more of an online type company, and then Kia Express Service for automotive. So we're seeing QR codes really across a pretty diverse industries. Augmented reality. This is one that I, again, especially as a mother to some tweens, AR is all the buzz among the younger kids, and I think it's only going to continue to grow and have more exciting potential. Here is Laxatani, had their first ever augmented reality experience. Download an app, get a free exclusive gift. Winners, another retailer, bringing your looks to life, and then Xfinity, even using augmented reality. Use your phone and see what more you can get with your Xfinity experience. So I think this is one where we're really going to see a lot of explosion in the next 5 or 10 years, or less than that maybe even, on how AR can be used really creatively and really easily for consumers to integrate with print and their devices. So with that all said, do we have some questions?
At the moment, we don't have any, Holly. We did get a compliment about having the presentation available. That's a good thing. I was listening to your presentation here and thinking about how some of your thoughts about the younger folks relate to people that I know, and you're right. If you don't have a screen in front of your face right now, you must be over 30 or 40, because that seems to be that many people are communicating. And the challenge, as you said, is to figure ways to make sure that consuming information that way does not leave you out of the range of printed and mailed products, which is important, of course, to all of it.
And then even with younger people, that they're not, a lot of what they're seeing, and that goes back to the, only 70% of people are paying attention, and of those, 45% are trying to get rid of it. Just because you have eyeballs does not mean you have purchases.
That's right, and I think early along, people who were spending marketing dollars figured that, oh boy, we can get a gazillion eyeballs for cheap here, and they're all going to go out and buy something.
Right.
And history proved that to be a fallacy. And now, as the numbers have indicated, you get a lot more bang for your buck, so to speak, if you put a piece of paper in front of somebody, because for one thing, a catalog has never interrupted your dinner. It just sits there and waits you to, and just yesterday I got a text on my phone from somebody who wanted to offer me a loan, and it's annoying to have these tools, whether it's your domestic email or your domestic phone, used by folks who are trying to just pummel you with sales pitches. Direct mail is much more respectful of your privacy, I think, in that way. But I think as we see, it was just to say, and as we see with the GDPR and with the California Consumer Privacy Act, people are going to become more guarded about their privacy, and I think mail is going to continue to kind of resurge, or if that's the right word, if that is a word, in popularity, because it's not as intrusive and people don't feel as threatened by it. And you can also make sure that the people who are your best prospects are the ones who receive your message, instead of just seeing 8 million people getting spam. Right. So that's a big difference. And I think it's one of those things that the print industry needs to keep in mind when it talks about itself, that it's not passé, it's simply evolving to a better position in the marketplace.
Exactly. And I think it isn't, because again, if you look back to maybe the 80s when print, or maybe even the 90s when direct mail volumes were at their highest, that kind of was where we were in a lot of ways. That's how junk mail came to be in the lexicon. We were not marketing as carefully as probably we should have. And, during those years, and being as thoughtful of the consumer. And we learned that lesson, so now I think the digital channels are having their own maturity, with it, that people don't want to just be carpet bombed. Right.
And hopefully it will take them as long to figure that out as it took direct mail, which will give us another 30 years of prosperity.
Exactly. Right.
So right now, looking at the question box here, I don't see any questions from our audience. I think that means they're probably set. They've been paying attention here. So I think before we, before it goes so much further, Holly, do you have any closing thoughts?
Hey, Holly, before you go, we actually do have one question.
Oh,
Okay.
Michelle got a question. Here we go.
It looks like the question is from one of our viewers here. If you were only sending one email blast along with a direct mail acquisition piece, is it better to send the email before or after the direct mail communication?
Wow. That's a really good question. I guess I would say we tend to see, if you've made the decision to invest in direct mail, like you know it's an audience that is direct mail responsive, we usually see customers doing the email afterward. On the flip side, if you have an audience that you're not as sure about, that you don't necessarily want to spend the investment on, but you have their email address or they've already opted in. Obviously, opt-in is really crucial, but assuming that this is an audience that's already opted in, we will sometimes send the email first. And kind of this goes back to that example that I showed with the cosmetic company. We'll send the email first to get, what we would consider maybe the low-hanging fruit that you can get with the lower investment, and then send the email to people who haven't responded. Then send the direct mail to people who haven't responded via email. But that totally depends on opt-in too. If you have the opt-in, and sometimes we see people using direct mail as a way to get an email address. Often we don't have email, and you can use like a general URL to use direct mail to capture email too, which is a little bit of a different tangent, but can be really effective. So I guess my answer is we see both. But again, if you know that this is a good direct mail responding audience and you're going to send, the direct mail is kind of a proven part of your strategy, I would say the email afterward to give the direct mail lift can be very successful. If you have a larger audience that you don't have budget to send direct mail to everybody, then sometimes email can help you to, cultivate or to weed out the people that you would get at a lower investment, and then mail to the people that are not responding to email that you need to spend a little extra money on. Does that help? Kind of a long-winded answer. It depends. The answer is it depends.
It depends. It's always a good answer. Yep. Okay, Michelle, do you see any more questions?
All looks
good. Okay. Well, at that point, then I think your contact information is up on the screen, Holly. Thank you. And if anybody in the audience has any questions or needs any more information, they can contact Holly or just contact us, info@mailershub.com, and we'll be happy to dig out whatever you need or send along whatever you may need to somebody. In the meantime, we want to thank everyone for calling in today. Our next webinar, of course, which we'd like to remind everyone about, is August 20th. It's called Get Ready, Holiday Mailing Preparations. It'll give us an idea of what's going on for the holiday mailing season in terms of postal preparations, so that we can understand what may or may not be challenges going into the fall when, of course, the volume picks up, hopefully. And in the meantime, if anybody has any interest in what we do, just contact us, info@mailershub.com, and we'll be able to give you whatever information you need. So thanks again to all of our participants today, to Holly. Thanks to Michelle for being the ever steady and ever ready colleague to help me out with these webinars here, keep me between the rails. And thanks to all of you for calling in, and we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you or having you on the line again in August. Until then, thanks. Talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.